Turn heads and bring the hype with a custom hype chain from Lotwin. Perfect for youth sports, fantasy football, or just flexing your pride. Go to Lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off your order. That's Lotwin.com, promo code TCCPOD for 10% off. Get your custom hype chain and get hype with Lotwin. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for March 9th, 2026. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Monday edition of the podcast. What a beautiful weekend. Yesterday was outstanding. It's supposed to be better today and tomorrow before we get a dose of what that groundhog did and have the winter weather return. Pardon the mess behind me here. We're getting some work done on our bathrooms later this week, so I had to store some vanities in here. So I do apologize, even if you can notice it. But anyway, let's get into Rewind the Weekend like we do every Monday morning. Brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. They got you covered for your Philly sports apparel needs. Always coming out with new shirts. Just go to the site and check it out. I told you about the Blue Jay shirt. There's more shirts that dropped over the weekend. Just Ryan and the crew over there are just nonstop, which is awesome. So go, phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off. All right, let's start with the Flyers. Pretty quiet trade deadline for the Flyers. They made a few moves, most notably moving Bobby Brink, but they had an influx of forwards, so it made it easy to move him. Still remains to be seen what the new guys and everything will do, but on the ice, it did lead to a 4-3 shootout win over the Penguins. Denver Barkey, Owen Tippett, and Alex Bump, who was just called up for the game from the Lehigh Valley, scored his first NHL goal. Good sign there for the Flyers. Hopefully they give him a little bit of time. I'll be honest, I don't know much about him, but from what I read, he does have a ton of potential and has been playing well in the Lehigh Valley. So give the kid a chance. They're in action tonight down at the X versus the Rangers. They come into the game 6 points behind the Bruins for a wild card spot. All right, not so good for the Sixers. They lose it 125-116 Saturday night to the Hawks. But most importantly, Tyrese Maxey and Adem Bona ran into each other. Maxey suffered a pinky injury in the final seconds, had some tests. I did not hear the results of those tests, but he is out for tonight and tomorrow's game. The Sixers are in Cleveland tonight. They currently are the 8th seed, so Sixers getting their Tom Petty on and free falling here in the NBA standings. Hopefully Maxey will not be out long term, because if he is, then we start looking ahead to some lottery picks. Phillies had some games over the weekend. Andrew Painter with another solid outing, hit 97. Justin Crawford looking good, flashing the leather out in center field. Johan Duran hit 101. And maybe, just maybe, is it time to start believing in the Phillies with this pitching staff? I think the questions will always be there with the lineup, but if you can get, and I'm kind of tempering these expectations because I said, again, I wanted to come in and see what Painter, Crawford, and possibly even Aiden Miller can do. But Painter's been solid. Yes, it's been spring training, but he hit 97. Duran getting into midseason form, and who knows if maybe the World Baseball Classic and the fact that these guys, Schwarber and Harper, are hitting in different spots may lead to them coming in. And apparently there's going to be a sit down between Schwarber, Harper, and Turner to try to figure out where they're going to bat. Maybe it's time to believe. And speaking of Schwarber, though, man, what a moonshot he hit the other night. Absolutely destroyed that ball. If you haven't seen it, go check out Kyle Schwarber's World Baseball Classic home run against Great Britain the other night. All right, the big story coming in starting today, the quote-unquote legal tampering period begins for the NFL. Over the weekend, the Eagles did extend Jordan Davis. I like that move a lot. 3-year deal. There were rumors that Jalen Carter was being shopped as part of trying to get Max Crosby. And again, of course I'm going to listen to offers. Of course I'm going to try to make this team better no matter what. So I don't really necessarily have a problem with it. But buckle up. It's going to be an interesting week here as NFL free agency kicks off. Heard this morning that Eagles and Jalen Phillips continue to talk. Seems like he is their top priority. So I wouldn't be surprised if that gets announced very soon. But buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride here for the next couple days as the first part of the NFL offseason gets started. And of course, there is a new Brotherly Birds breakdown out where we talk about what we expect to see in free agency, go over some names, things like that. We also discuss the A.J. Brown situation, which I guess there's always the opportunity or always the chance, but I think the more that time goes on, the more it's likely that A.J. is going to stay. But go check that out. But we will keep you updated as any news breaks. The Union lost to San Jose down in Chester yesterday or Saturday night, 1-0. They have a couple games this week, including the round of 16 of the CONCACAF Champions Cup against Club America from La Liga. That is Tuesday night down and in Chester. So stay tuned for that. But not a good weekend for our teams. Of course, Flyers winning was the highlight, and Schwarber's Schwarbomb. But not a good weekend for our Union and our Sixers. Really bad for our Sixers. All right, what happened this weekend in Philly sports history? Let's go back to March 7th. First, 1982, the Sixers beat the Lakers in a NBA Finals preview. Andrew Toney scores a career-high 46 on 21 for 29 shooting. All 2-pointers. No 3-pointers for Andrew Toney in that game. And then fast forward to 1995, Richie Ashburn was voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee. He would go in later that summer with Mike Schmidt. All right, March 8th, we go back to 1941. And on this day, March 8th in 1941, Hugh Mulcahy of the Phillies becomes the first Major League Baseball player drafted into World War II. Poor Hugh was nicknamed Losing Pitcher because he never had a season where he had a winning record. Of course, he played on some pretty bad Phillies teams. Also did make an All-Star, but Hugh Mulcahy of the Phillies becomes the first player in Major League Baseball to get drafted in the World War II. And then 1967, Sixers beat the Celtics 115-113 in overtime at the Boston Garden to clinch the NBA Eastern Division title. And more importantly, it was their 63rd win of the season, breaking the NBA record set by those Celtics a few years before. Then 1971, the fight of the century, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Madison Square Garden, and it was Philly's own Joe Frazier beating Ali by unanimous decision to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Pretty cool. At the National Liberty Museum the other night, saw both fighters' trunks from this fight as well as Joe Frazier's robe. So pretty cool tie-in there. And then 1986, Flyers lose to the Devils 7-3. Tim Kerr, though, scored 2 goals, including a power play goal, his 29th of the season, setting the NHL record for power play goals in a season. He would get that extended to 34 before the end of the season in a record that still stands today. All right, that is Rewind the Weekend, brought to you as always by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com for your Philly sports apparel needs and use the promo code Jim Montgomery, all one word, to take 10% off of your order. All right. Be sure to follow me also on all social media platforms at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel Jimbo_Mont and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. And then Friday's trivia question, we talked about the 66-67 Sixers. And I asked what four teams have more wins than that Sixers team. That would be the 15-16 Warriors, who had 73, the 95-96 Bulls, who had 72, the 71-72 Lakers, and the 96-97 Bulls each had 69 wins each. Thank you for everyone who participated in our trivia question. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, where passionate fans make powerful content. Check out theclashingconferences.com and join the squad today. All right, March 9th. Got a lot of random tidbits here today, so let's get into it. First, let's go back to 1977. On this day in 1977, the Eagles acquired the rights to Ron Jaworski for tight end Charlie Young. They then signed Jaws to a 5-year, $800,000 contract. Jaworski would go on to play 10 years with the Eagles, culminating the high point, which was the trip to Super Bowl 15 in 1980. He also made a Pro Bowl that year. I have to say, for the most part, trade worked out pretty well for Dick Vermeil and the Eagles. But Eagles get Ron Jaworski on this day in 1977. 2 years later, in 1979, the Penn Quakers kicked off their NCAA tournament. They were the 9 seed, and they opened with a 73-69 win over Iona. That run would become a little bit magical there, as Penn would make it all the way to the Final Four. We'll have more on that Penn team as we go through the month of March. And then fast forward to the year 2000, more Wilt Chamberlain, because of course, there's always something we can do with Wilt Chamberlain. But on this day in 2000, the Harlem Globetrotters retired Wilt Chamberlain's number. He played for the Globetrotters in the 58-59 season instead of his senior year at Kansas, due to him just wanting to go out and make money. Felt that he was ready. But NBA rules at the time prohibited players from playing in the NBA until the end of what would have been their senior season. So he said, I'm going to take my talents to the Harlem Globetrotters. Got paid $50,000. Not too bad instead of playing your senior year of Kansas. But the Globetrotters retired Wilt Chamberlain's number. I believe he was the first player of the Globetrotters to have his number retired. And then fast forward 2 years, and an interesting note from Phillies spring training, Larry Bowa was suspended for the Phillies' second regular season game that year against the Braves for arguing excessively and making inappropriate comments during a spring training game to one of the umpires. Yeah, suspended for, I guess they didn't suspend him for the opening game, but they made him wait till game 2. And ironically enough, that was not the only time that Larry Bowa got suspended for a regular season game in spring training. It happened like 3 or 4 other times, both as manager and as a bench coach. So Larry is going to be Larry, but Larry Bowa is suspended on this day. Well, ejected from the spring training game on this day, ended up being suspended for excessive arguing and making inappropriate comments. Larry, don't change, my friend. Don't change. And then fast forward to 2013, Bernard Hopkins won the IBF light heavyweight title, beating Tavoris Cloud up at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, becoming the oldest fighter of any weight division to win a title at 48 years, 53 days, breaking his own record of 46 years and 126 days. He would actually fight into his 50s. So Bernard Hopkins winning the IBF light heavyweight championship on this day, becoming the oldest fighter any weight class to win a championship. He would, I believe he would actually break that record at some point as well. But that does lead us into today's trivia question. Whose record did Bernard Hopkins originally break as the oldest fighter to win a championship any weight class? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest, Give me your Eagles free agent predictions. Who do you want to see? Who do you want to sign? Want to bitch about the Sixers? That's fine too. Should the Eagles trade Jalen Carter and A.J. Brown if it's going to improve the team? Lots to talk about. But more importantly, whose record did Bernard Hopkins break to become the oldest oldest champion at any weight class? Because on this day in 2013, he broke his record, but whose record did he originally break? And then finally today, our Women's History Month spotlight. From Philly to the WNBA, every journey starts somewhere. For these women, it started in Philly, on playgrounds, rec centers, gyms, city college courts, or even in the classroom, and it led directly to the WNBA. Today, we're going to take a look at Kathleen Engelbert, who is the WNBA commissioner. She's the first commissioner. Up until when she took over, the WNBA had presidents, but Kathleen Engelbert became the first WNBA commissioner. She's a Collingswood, New Jersey native. And in her term as commissioner, she's helped significantly increase the league, expansion for teams, exposure for the league, partnerships, investment in the sport. It's probably the healthiest it's ever been underneath her leadership. Of course, we have a team coming to Philly in about 4 years, possibly 3, I guess, depending on how quickly that stadium can get built. But she wasn't any slouch on the court herself. She went to Lehigh, played under Hall of Famer Muffet McGraw. She came to Lehigh as a walk-on and became the captain of the team. She also played lacrosse, where she was the captain of the lacrosse team too. So Kathy was no slouch on the field, but better known for being the WNBA commissioner who has helped oversee a ton of expansion for the league. And I must say, I would think there's more interest now in the WNBA. Part of that is the players, obviously, but under the leadership of Kathleen Engelbert, the league has certainly grown. So from Philly, in this case, South Jersey, to the WNBA, we celebrate the journey, whether it's on the court or in the front offices. Kathy Engelbert is today's Women's History Spotlight. On this day in 2013, Bernard Hopkins becomes the oldest fighter to ever win a championship in any weight class, breaking his own record. He was 48 years old and 53 days. Like I said, I believe he did break that record again. In 2000, Wilt Chamberlain has his Harlem Globetrotters number retired. 2002, Larry Bowa gets ejected from a Phillies spring training game, which would also lead him to be suspended for the Phillies' second regular season game that year. And in 1977, the Eagles acquired Ron Jaworski in a move that would ultimately lead Dick Vermeil and the Eagles to their first ever Super Bowl. We will have everything you need to know tomorrow about Eagles free agency. Might even address some rumors depending on what comes up. We'll keep you posted on Tyrese Maxey's finger. Anything with the Flyers as they're down in action tonight, down at the X against the Rangers. They're teetering. Both winter sports teams right now are like teetering on that playoff lottery. So we'll keep you posted on that as we go. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for March 9th, 2026. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Monday. Enjoy this weather. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.